son's name is Michael Ryan Pritchard, and he was born in Oakland, California on May 4th, 1972. I was a licensed foster home, and one day I got a phone call. It was the county, and they said they had an emergency situation. They needed to place a baby who was 6 weeks old. And I said, bring him on over. Eventually, we were able to adopt him, and that's how Michael came into my life. When Michael came to us, I was married to Patrick Pritchard. He was a student at UC Berkeley. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had another daughter who was about 4. She liked having Michael. She got to be the big sister.
He was always so cute and just had a head full of blonde hair. I was happy to have a little brother.
After we bought our first house, we upgraded. We moved to a bigger house in Elson County.
His first elementary was Hillview.
He got upset when he went to kindergarten and punched his teacher.
She was wanting him to do something, and he didn't do it, so he was just like, pow. He
was very opinionated. He's like, just had no sense of fear, and I think that's been his attitude his whole life. Just go for it. We were a close family. Patrick and I had been together for quite a few years, but when it went bad, it just went bad. Michael was about 6 or 7 when we split up.
Michael went with my dad, and I stayed with my mom. That was hard. I miss my brother a lot. My mom wanted us together, but my dad wasn't really letting that happen.
I think it was really hard on him, just the tearing up of the family. There was one very big scene between his father and I that was really especially ugly.
My brother was like in 3rd grade, and he was coming over to stay for the weekend, and my mother and father started fighting. Both of us ran out of the house screaming, and then the police came.
I ended up having to go to court to get Michael and Mila back together, and they ended up both with me.
My brother stayed with us from then on.
The fighting that he saw, I think all kids, when that happens, have a sense of anger.
He didn't talk a whole lot about that. He was probably hiding a lot of pain.
I think Michael kind of shut himself down to where he couldn't hear or see it. He kept everything inside of him.
He started playing the guitar probably about a year after I got divorced.
Michael started practicing a lot, all the time. I mean, he could never get the guitar out of his hand.
He'd come home from school, and instead of going out and playing with the other kids, he spent all his spare time in his bedroom listening to music and playing.
I think he found it therapeutic.
A lot of his expression came out in his music. It was in him. It was in him, and it just came out. It was around that time I found a 3-bedroom house in Rodeo.
Michael started 4th grade at Carquinez Middle School. That's when he met Billy. The thing that connected them together was the music. They were both into the music, and they were both playing the lead guitar.
After that, him and Mike hooked up. They were around 11.
They were inseparable, playing music together, hanging out together.
Mike was really kind of a spastic, skinny character.
Skinny, hyper, obnoxious, and funny. Like, all in one.
Okay, we're ready. The equipment was set up in our living room permanently, and my mom allowed them to play and practice all the time.
Billy found somebody that played drums, and he took me and just told me what to do on bass.
Actually, we're supposed to play it up here, like right here.
He told Mike what to do on guitar.
Okay, follow me on guitar, okay?
Just started playing songs.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It was all about Motley Crue, Van Halen, Kiss, of course.
Standard 8th grade rock stuff.
Let's talk about perfect. Let's talk about show.
That's when Michael started picking up the bass.
So they kicked me out of the band pretty much because I sucked.
Billy taught Mike his first bass licks, and then Mike just took to it.
In high school, he couldn't bring his bass to school, and so he would sit around and go, Dirnt, 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 Dirnt. And that's how he got the name Dirnt.
Music was Mike's life. He always had that outward positive attitude, but he was going through hard times.
My mother was broke. She was working like 3 jobs to survive.
It took everything I had just to get the bills paid and the rent paid.
And then she lost her house. My mother wanted to leave the Bay Area. She just couldn't afford it anymore. But Michael didn't want to leave.
By then, him and Billy were well on their way to getting the band together. That was the only thing he ever really wanted.
He knew that that was going to be his life. He was going to make music his life.
It was hard on Michael. He loved the music, he was talented, but I had to go.
When Mike was 15 years old, his mom decided to move out of Rodeo.
Michael didn't want to leave.
Mike decided to stay and do his own thing.
He went to stay at Billy's, and that was fine with me because I knew it was a good, safe place for him to be.
Mike moved into the garage, and he became a part of our family. He was like another son to my mom and another brother to us.
I had like 75 detentions, and the principal calls me in, and he's laughing, going, Mike, nobody in the school has more detentions than you.
He was so obnoxious, and people would get irritated with him. But I always thought it was funny, and I think a lot of it had to do with trying to get a laugh out of me all the time.
The new friends had a common love for all things antisocial, especially the furious sound of hardcore punk.
You hear that stuff, you're like, oh, wow, that's cool. It's got total energy, and it sounds like it's coming from people that are playing out the same kind of amps that I have. You know? Crap.
As they entered their teens, Billy Joe and Mike started venting their adolescent angst through songs.
Sweet children, sweet children.
They formed a band called Sweet Children, and friends plugged